places I spent time was in New Mexico, in Denver, New Mexico, and they kept me there when I finished my training as an instructor. And another fellow that I got to know, Barney Clark, was from Provo, Utah. He was also kept as an instructor, and we were quite close friends. Well, Barney's girlfriend came down about the same time Aileen came down, and he married his girlfriend at the time I married Aileen, and we got to be close friends. We used to come together and have dinner together. And because Barney was a character, and one night we were eating supper, and he said, "Bob, did you hear the latest tragic story out at the field?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, you know, we're allowed to take our wives up for a trip. Well, some Sunday, once a month." And that was true. And I took Aileen up a couple of times, you know, but then I'm a bombardier. I didn't fly. I knew better than that. But at any rate, I got to know these people who were good Mormons, and visiting with them. When Aileen came down and we got married, the reason I'm stammering, I'm trying to make it short. For me, that's a problem. So when Aileen came down, the first thing you have to do is look for a house. Well, I went to this Mormon couple that I'd gotten to know, and sure enough, they had houses for rent, and one of them was then open. So all the friends I know that were married were living in cold closets, so to speak, because it was a little town and it was jammed with people. Aileen and I had a 2-bedroom home. But things like this happened to Aileen, that's what I'm getting at. She had a spirit of trust. Most of you know. I've never known anyone. And this was partly due to the training with her mother. And her mother, by the way, was a sister to the brother that we have here. And got to know these people. So she came to me one day and said, "You know, I know that you're living in a bedroom with your wife, because places are so scarce. We have a house that's now open, and if you're interested, you can have it." So Lee and I had a 2-bedroom house while all the other guys were living in closed closets. Why do I tell you that? Things like this happened to Aileen. Her children know she had a childlike faith. I've never known anyone that has a childlike faith as she did. Sometimes it embarrassed me, but we're in the military, and we'd often go out to dinner with people, and they'd tell stories that are rather colored. Aileen sat there, she turned to me and said, "What's the funny point?" They used to say, when we were out, they'd say, no funny stories tonight, we got Aileen Conrad. So that's the kind of wife that we're talking about here. She was as pure and as clean as anyone I've ever known. And her children know that. They never heard her use a nasty word or tell a nasty story or to gossip. She just didn't. In fact, I'm amazed she didn't just someday just float off into space. She just operated in a different world of life. But Aileen was a blessing, and her children know that. They grew up with Bible stories every day, and they knew when they had problems, their mom was going to pray with them. And it wasn't an act. That's the way she lived. That's what she believed. I may have missed it. I probably told you the story already. That when she was down there, we were allowed as Air Force people in the Air Force to go for a Sunday trip with our wives or a mother once a month. We were allowed to go on a Sunday afternoon trip in the military plane. And so one day this couple, Barney Clark was from Provo, and his wife, he was just married, and she knew Aileen. And we were having dinner, and Barney turned to me and said, "Bob, had you heard that horrible story?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, one of the fellows out there took his wife up for a Sunday drive, for a Sunday ride." And she got frightened because he did a few little tricks. And she reached over and started grabbing handles, and she hit a release lever. Out she went. Well, Aileen and this girl were horror-struck. Word, how terrible. He saw was an okay. She was an old bag and she could follow that. God has been very good to me, and one of the best lessons was I had a mother like Aileen, and Aileen, who most of you know, there was no act, there was no play with Aileen. She was just what she was. You never heard her use a questionable word, even slang. She was a school teacher, much less a swear word. You never heard her tell a colored story. If someone else did, she would leave. I was used to that, and believe me, I grew up in McGill, Nevada, so that means I made some choices, had to make some changes. But she was like my mother. She was a great choice because she has a sense of humor, fantastic mother, dedicated school teacher, taught all our kids to read before they got to school. So many things about her were positive. And now that she's gone and I think back on it, I realize even more than I did before that God gave me a very unusual blessing. Because she was not so good that she was good for nothing. That was not a limit. She liked to have fun. We went on lots of trips to climb mountains, we did all kinds of things. She liked to have fun. I'm kind of anxious to see her, but I'd rather have her come back than have me. But I thank you all for this occasion and showing honor for Aileen and for the life that she has lived, and that you came to know as I, that it was a life dedicated to Christ Jesus. You can say, I knew a real Christian, and I married one, for which I thank God.